Good evening. Welcome to our worship service here at Woodson Chapel and our Bible classes. We're glad to have you with us tonight as we have this chance to meet midweek and study God's Word together. Glad to be with you this week. Unlike what Mike might have mentioned on Sunday, and then my great-grandfather-in-law asked to see, I was not sleeping in on Sunday. I was in fact, preaching out in Arizona on Sunday, but it's good to be back, although it was warmer in Arizona than what it was when I landed here Sunday evening. A few announcements to make and then a few prayer requests. Today is the very last day to sign up for the youth group spring retreat. According to the paper in front of me, today is the very last day to do so. The food pantry item is peanut butter. There's a Woodson Widowed Luncheon on March the 19th. There's more details that will be coming soon on that. And then there's a save the date, which Mike announced a few times, but in case you didn't hear those announcements, April 5th and 6th is our trip down to Birmingham for encouragement. So please sign up so we know how many hotel rooms to reserve for that. And then sign up in the cabinets for the Wednesday night dinner by this coming up Sunday. So that's next Wednesday night. Those are the announcements that I have. As always, there is the family newsline/bulletin that is emailed out to everyone on Wednesdays and Fridays, I believe. If you're not getting that, the church office would love to add you to the list. And it also has all the details for the announcements that are made up here and the announcements that are not made up here, so you will know what's going on at Woodson Chapel. A few prayer requests. Marie Anderson had outpatient procedure last Tuesday. We'll have a scan on Friday, so continue to be praying for her. Linda Dennis, the mother of Melanie Gall, is in Williamson Medical Center at this time, hoping to be discharged tomorrow, so pray for her and for Melanie as well. Joanne Hicks, the sister of Joyce Forbes in St. Thomas West, so be praying for her. And Randy Jeter is at home but dealing with considerable back pain at this time, so to make sure we are praying for him as well. There are others on our sick list that we'd love to continue to pray for. You can find them in the aforementioned bulletin/family newsline. We have a couple of folks who are experiencing loss in their family. Joanne Franks had her sister pass, Nita Adams. Joanne was a longtime former member at Woodson Chapel. Her sister's service will be 2 p.m. on Tuesday at the Creve Hall Church of Christ. And Mike McPherson's father-in-law, Vetchel Sadler, passed away this morning. I don't believe we have arrangements yet, but that is what we have so far in terms of praying for them and those that are in our announcements. That's the announcements and prayer requests that I have. I think Tim is leading the singing, so I'll hand it over to him.
Blessed assurance.
Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine. Ever salvation, purchase of God, born of His Spirit, washed in His blood. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. Perfect submission, all is at rest. I am my Savior, and happy and blessed, watching and waiting, looking above, filled with His goodness, lost in His love. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long.
Had several people that weren't able to extend the invitation, so I'm filling in for some. And I was hoping Clay Smith, who is visiting with us, but he's tired from coming in, and he doesn't owe me anything. I performed his wedding, but and I'm the reason they got married, because I had faith that it would work. Actually, when they were liking each other really from elementary school, right? And I remember she had moved to Florida, right? His future wife had moved to Florida, but she came up for church camp. And I remember that year we went skating. We left High Lake and went skating. And I remember watching them holding hands going around. And I remember, this is never going to work. I mean, she's in Florida. This has no hope. And I was wrong. And he was pursuing, for a long, long time. I wish we could pursue that way the Lord. I wished I could. I know at times I hope I am. The Bible talks about that Christ stands at the door and knocks. He does not barge in. He doesn't knock the door in. You have the freedom to do whatever you'd like. A lot of people get upset at the thought that what about certain people that they don't hear the gospel in the purity, and they don't, what about them? Well, God's going to take care of all those situations, but God is not going to make anybody come to him that doesn't want to. And one of the terrible things in life is having free choice. The beauty of life is we have free choice, and it comes with consequences sometimes. Fortunately, we can make that choice. We can pursue God and open the door. And if you haven't done that, we'll take this opportunity for you to come forward if you have not been baptized. By your faith and repentance, we'll do so as we stand and sing. Mr. Tim?
Would you live for Jesus and be always good and good? Would you walk with him within the narrow road? Would you have your bear your burden, carry all your load? Let him have his way with me. His heart can make you what you want to be. His blood can cleanse your heart and make you free. His love can fill your soul, and you will see what's best for him to have his way with thee. Would you in his kingdom find a place of constant rest? Would you prove him through each providential test? Would you in his service labor always at your best? Let him have his way with thee. His heart can make you what you want to be. His blood can cleanse your heart and make you free. His love can fill your soul, and you will see what's best for him to have his way with thee.
Let's pray. We're just so thankful for another night where we can come and spend time in fellowship with you. We're thankful for the many blessings that you give to us, and we're just so grateful for, again, the opportunity to be here. And again, we just say thank you for your love, thank you for your care, and just continue to be with us throughout the rest of the week. We pray in Jesus' name, amen.
This isn't working. Y'all might want to. So. It's okay. You might need to go back and spray your neck there. Well, welcome. Good to have all of you. So, I need to put on the mic, don't I? I hope this works. Test. Is it working? Wasn't working a while ago. Okay. Am I good, Jeff? We're on the air actual live right now. Does my voice sound melodious? Tomorrow night, our school has a talent show, and I'm opening the talent show with Born to Be Wild. And I rehearsed with the band. They're really good, our students' band, and they know all the classic rock. That's what I love about the teacher has taught them, good Christian music like Led Zeppelin and Steppenwolf, like we learned, as we should when we were younger. And I told them, I said, just play, because I'm not a performer. I can sing in tune, but I'm not a performer. I said, just play real loud so they won't hear it. So I will get some DVDs available for you if you'd like to hear more of that. And because we're in here and I don't have presenter mode, I have to turn around and do that, and I apologize for that. But I think my backside looks as good as the front side. Better, thank you, yes. Okay. We're in the book of James, and I'm going to spend 2 more weeks on a part of James that we began a few weeks ago about the tongue, and actually finish up what we were talking about last week. It's hard to believe that last week we're in short sleeves, and 2 weeks from tonight, 2 weeks ago, it was snowing. So it's Nashville changing. And we were talking about things to say and not say to people in grief and tragedy. And I think that ties in to James saying, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. So I'm going to finish that up. This will just take a little bit. It's kind of like we didn't have time to finish last week because you wanted to leave right at the bell and didn't want to stay at all. So I had to shut it down right there. So this is what we would have said had you been patient. And we were talking about things to say and not say. And we try to do a quick fix. We try to put a Band-Aid on someone, and it's insulting, even though we don't mean it. And we all mean well. The people that say things they shouldn't, they mean well. But it's insulting in so many ways because it's producing, for one thing, it can produce guilt that I want to make you happy right now so you're okay, and they need more time. And it's offering a quick fix instead of just being there. And in Romans, we should be happy when our fellow brethren are happy. That's tough if someone that's a Christian at your company gets the promotion over you. That makes it tough. But yet it also says, weep with those who weep. It doesn't say, fix those who are weeping. That's in stupid 12:15. We're not supposed to try to fix the situation. We're supposed to try to Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. Now, a couple of things as we close this part, and then we'll get to the other I wanted to be in tonight. What can you say? What should you say? A lot of you that have been in grief know that sometimes you don't want to hear them say anything. One of y'all was telling me, I think it was one of y'all, that when Job's friends came to visit him, they did really good for a week. Who was that was talking to me? Was it one of y'all? Yeah, what did they do for a week? They didn't say anything. That was the best comforting. Then they opened their mouth, and they were teaching false doctrine to him. If they had just continued on like that, saying, I'm sorry, I'm here, I'm praying for you, without trying to say, it's going to get better, it's going to be okay, it's God's will. God will, things aren't God's will, but that doesn't mean he causes every single thing to happen. And then before we get to the next section, let me share with you, because I know she's probably watching at home. Betty Fort, after my wife passed away, and Barbara, you were probably in on this too, so I want to give you credit possibly. But Betty came up to me, and Betty, as you know, doesn't have a very strong personality. She's just kind of a little puppy there. And Betty comes up to me and says, I want to know what I can do to help you out. And I'm not going to say, get a hold of me if I can help you. Because that's what we do a lot of times. Call me if you need me. She said, before I leave here, you're going to tell me something that you need done that will help you out. And I'm not going to leave until you do. And I believed her. So I didn't want her following me home. And so I thought just for a second. And I said, could you call the people, the companies that keep sending Lisa mail to stop it and discontinue it? She said, that's what we're going to do. So every week I would bring her the letters and the things that were sent to Lisa from different groups, Bed Bath & Beyond, places like that. And it took a year before that it basically, it just trickles now. There's some things you can't stop. But all the stuff that could be stopped. And Betty would have this conversation sometimes with the company, whoever it was. She would start by saying, I'm calling for this family, Lisa McPherson, who's passed away. She receives your stuff. And her husband wants you to discontinue sending to her. And sometimes they would say, well, he has to contact us himself. And Betty, in her whipped puppy tone, would say, look, he just lost his wife. He doesn't feel like calling all these people, and you're going to cancel it, or I'm going to talk to your superior. And yes, ma'am. Okay, we'll take care of that. And she got it slowly, basically stopped. I think it's one of the great things that's ever been done for somebody in grief. I'll never forget that, and because it was so painful seeing this stuff come in and realizing all the money that Lisa wasted on all these groups too ticked me off to no end. No wonder we stayed middle class. But it meant so much. So, Betty, thank you, and Barbara, if you helped. Okay, now, going to a different arena of the tongue. And because I don't have presenter mode where I can see the next thing, what I do is I run off the slide so I can see what's next. So you see that print right there? I can't. So, okay, here we go. Proverbs 17. Whoever restrains his words has knowledge, and he who has a cool spirit is a man of understanding. Even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. Abraham Lincoln also took a cue off that and said it's better to be quiet and thought a fool rather than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. And, you know, you take a temperature in your mouth to find out your body temp. Our words, our tongue is what gives us the temperature of our soul. And so James now launches into another misuse of the tongue. We all stumble in many ways. Did y'all believe that when you were young? Like Woodson Chapel, I'm sure in the old days, back in the 70s. Who was here at Woodson in the 60s and 70s? I know the Osborns. Are y'all it? When did, Steve, when did y'all come? 80s? Okay. I would assume Woodson was a lot like Radnor, a nice middle-class conservative congregation. And as a kid growing up, I didn't think our congregation had problems. Everybody looked nice, and nobody looked like a sinner. They didn't look like they had issues and problems, but I think now we all know that we all stumble in many ways, don't we? Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect. I don't know if that's tongue-in-cheek or not. They are able to keep their whole body in check if they can keep the tongue in check. And then he turns to the animal kingdom. And just like the Hebrew, the Greek here, the New Testament writers, they do the same thing as the Hebrew writers. They like to use very vivid, picturesque language. If we put bits into the mouths of horses so they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. I had a little girl at Lipscomb years ago. She's about 110 pounds. And she rode at these horse shows. And with that one bridle, she'd control a 500-pound beast that could throw her off and stomp her if it wanted to, but it had been trained to be tamed. Now, I want to tell a horseback riding story to illustrate the tongue and the bridle. I believe it was, is it Edmund Warner or Percy Warner? Didn't they used to have riding stables out there? Forgot which one it was. But when I was in college, and if you use your imagination, you can almost picture me now. If you'll just try to go back, and that's funny to you, isn't it? I was at Lipscomb College at the time, and there was no restriction on sideburns. You could just, whatever you wanted on the sideburns. So I took full advantage of that leniency. And so there was a girl that I was dating. This was before I knew Lisa. She was probably crazy about me, but that's not the important thing that what we're talking about right now. That's not the focus. So she and I and 3 other friends went horseback riding. And so we got to the stables, and the horses all have a name. That makes it more personal. And I got Renegade. And I would find out real soon why he had that name. So you're supposed to walk like this. It's actually boring. But if you want a nice, relaxing Saturday, this is the thing to do. But if you're wanting to like rehearse for Lone Ranger in the Wild West and American Indian, then this isn't the thing to do. And so we started out. As soon as I got on Renegade, immediately, he went 0 to 60 out the corral. Because he knows the sooner he gets back, he gets the oats ahead of the other horses. And so, boom, he's gone. Now, I had only ridden 1 or 2 other times in my life, and I had never run a horse. I had kind of trotted with one, but that was more painful than anything. But on TV, I'd see these cowboys and these Indians, and they're riding, and it looks so smooth. It looks just so wonderful. And then my experience was just, it was jarring my teeth. Well, it is a little smooth when you're going 50 miles an hour. He was probably going 30, but it seemed much faster. So this was my view. The woods are just a blur, just going by me. And I'm scared to death. And so I start pulling on the reins as hard as I can. And it's not phasing Renegade. He has no training on stopping. I don't know why he was still around. I guess, they needed to keep him there for money, but surely I'm not the first one that he goes 0 to 60 on. And so I'm pulling on the reins so hard, and I don't want to hurt him, but I'm fearing for my life more than my concern for him. I'm jerking so hard on the rein that his head is turning back at me, and his saliva is hitting me in the face. That's how hard I'm yanking on the reins there. And it's not phasing. He's staying in the full sprint. And this goes on for 10 or 15 minutes. And I'm just hoping he'll tuck around. And he does about halfway through. He finally just gives in. And so I get off of him. And I'm worn out too. And my heart's flying. And so I sit down. About 25 minutes later, here comes the rest of the group. What are you doing? You're not supposed to run them. We're not supposed to do that. I said, he's crazy. He's on cocaine. He's lost his mind. He's renegade. And they said, well, come on, let's keep going and stay with us. I'm trying. So I thought, well, maybe renegade is still a little bit tuckered out. I got my foot just in the stirrup, and he, boom, takes off. So now I'm on the side of the horse with one foot in the stirrup like this. I mean, and from a distance, it probably thought, man, he is an experienced rider. Look at him. And he's just flying like this. And now at his full speed, I finally get my leg. I thought I was going to fall off and break my neck. I get my leg over. He's back in about 10 minutes, and the rest of the group, 30 minutes later, here they come. But Renegade did not obey the bridle. And I imagine God looks at us kind of like this sometimes, that he just wants to yank on our mouth so badly. Now, it's not that as I look around this august group, that I know that there's some problems with gossip and saying things. Let me just make sure as I look around here, just double check. Yeah. That hasn't happened. But I'm assuming you're like me, because I caught myself gossiping yesterday at school to a coaching friend. I caught myself. And so, I don't know about you, this is probably the sin that's most easily committed without your realization. You don't think about it, you don't realize it. Now, as we go into this, when we look back at the Hebrew, and the Greek takes some hints from this, but the writers in Hebrew, they like to be very picturesque. We, in the West here, we talk in more generalities. Like if I said, describe God, you might say eternal, all-loving, all-powerful. If you were Hebrew, they would say things like, he's a rock. He's like a mother hen. He's living water. They would give you a picture of something. That's the way the Hebrew is all through it. The Lord is my shepherd, makes me to lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, rod and staff, the shadow of death, cup overflowing. See, those are all vivid things. He could have just said, the Lord looks over us. He leads us. He could have done that. But it's more picturesque. Look how, in these next verses, how the Bible, it almost looks like it's blaming the body part for the sin. Feet swift to shed innocent blood, almost like it's the feet's fault. See, that's more picturesque. We know the feet didn't walk over to do the murder, despite the wishes of the person that owned the feet. Eyes full of adultery. It's not the eye's fault. A throat that is an open grave. That's the type of language you get, and that's why it's very picturesque. No one can tame the tongue. Now, some of you know Coach Roller. Now, that is an old picture. Now, Coach Roller occasionally visits and sits back here about twice a year. So, catch him sometime and ask him if he's going to visit that often. Is he contributing on Sunday morning? Because it's time for him to be a partial member. So be sure and tell him I said that. And this is when he was a young man. This is when he was at Georgia Christian. He coached up here at Lipscomb. I was his 8th grade coach for a long time with the 8th grade. And look at that record. He was on ESPN. This is from ESPN. So it was incredible. And he always said little one-liners. He was a mentor of mine. He didn't even realize it. But he said, rarely do we have to apologize for what we don't say. Just think about that one. If I hadn't have said that, if I had not have said that. And that's kind of what this tongue part is. Now, let's look at some text. Proverbs. Do y'all mind me turning? Is it okay? I look fine from the back. Okay. When words are many, transgression is not lacking. But whoever restrains his lips is prudent. James 3, back to James. But no human can tame the tongue. It's a restless evil. Look again at the language. It's restless. It's full of poison. And then, this is something I talked to my freshmen about today. With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse men. I said, kids, y'all go to chapel and you sing these praises to God, and then you walk into the hallways and cuss somebody or pick on somebody. He says, from the same mouth come blessing and cursing. These things ought not to be so. Does a spring pour forth from the same opening both fresh and salt water? Can a fig tree, my brothers, bear olives, or a grapevine produce figs? Now, years ago, is there a Chip Osborne in our group? Is there a Chip Osborne? Okay. Chip gave me a book, and I have shared this in a sermon a long time ago. But you've forgotten since then, so I can repeat almost all of my stories. It was called Parenting Prodigals. It was about trying to guide our children back that were adults that have fallen away from God. And so this guy, what was his name? I think it was Waldron, something close to Waldron. He said that he went out and he found 30 people from when he was growing up at church that had fallen away. Now, not all of them had given up on God. Some of them had given up on the church. Some had quit God. And when I say they still believed in God, they didn't give up on God, but they gave up on the church. I'm not saying that's okay. I'm just saying that's where the different smorgasbord of people were. And he found 30. And coincidentally, 15 had returned and 15 hadn't. But they all agreed to the survey. And so he asked them, what is it that caused you to leave? Be it become an atheist, an agnostic, you believe in God, but you leave the church, wherever they were on that scale. And almost everybody listed more than one thing. But they all listed this. And if you had listened to that sermon that day, and I know you didn't, but you probably would have never guessed this one. But every one of them said, one thing that led to it was at church, hearing Christians talk in ways about other Christians that they never ought to. And he talked about how this lady that had quit the church and her mom was, honey, you need to come back. You need to come back. And she said, growing up, when we got in the car, all we ever heard from our parents was how that long-winded preacher was no good. And that song leader led the wrong songs. And it was just a bunch of hypocrites down there. And she wondered why, I did not want to return and listen to that long-witted preacher with that terrible song leader and all those hypocrites. She wondered, why does she not understand I don't want to go there? And that's why in this past Sunday sermon, if you have odds with youth minister, preacher, elders, deacons, me, whoever, it's okay to have those odds. I just don't think they should be shared with your children, your grandchildren. They don't need to hear you venting and airing stuff. Okay? Jerry, one thing I appreciate about him, he airs it right to my face. He doesn't matter. You know, Sandra is going to hear about it because he's saying it out loud. But he goes right to the source. But our kids don't need to hear us ripping authority. Then he goes, again, here's another picturesque illustration. Look at the ships also. Though they're large and are driven by strong winds, they're guided by a very small rudder wherever the will of the pilot directs. Now, John, did you preach in the old days from the King James? Did you use the King James Version as a young preacher? Okay. A lot of you grew up on the King James.
I began that way, yes.
Okay. Do you remember what it says here in the King? I love this in the King James. Wherever the governor listeth. I love that. Wherever the governor listeth. I love that. This is probably a little bit clearer to understand, more than likely. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. Now this is a story about 4 preachers. Now that automatically sounds like a joke, doesn't it? And it might be. I don't know. It could be a joke. I'm not sure. But the 4 preachers, as the story goes, were out fishing. And they got to talking about how, you know, we kind of expect our members to come to us for counseling and to maybe if they need to confess something, we have an invitation song. And they got to kind of going, maybe we need to do that too. Maybe this is a safe group. And so one preacher started it off and said, I don't do this. I don't do with a lot with this, but sometimes I don't report all of my income to IRS. I said, I mean, I do most of it, but I always feel bad about that. And I don't feel like I'm being upfront with them. And another one said, I don't get drunk, but I sometimes drink a little bit too much, and I get kind of tipsy, and I kind of like that. On Saturday night, and I'm not planning on going anywhere, and I got my sermon done. And another said, I don't cuss normally, but when I get hurt, if I hurt myself, I will let one rip. And the fourth one said, well, my problem is gossip. I can't wait to get back to town. That's probably a joke, but it may have some truth. I don't know. But if it's not true, it should be. No one can tame the tongue. Now, I want us to look at Romans 1 here as we go into this next section about the tongue. And it's a rather lengthy reading, and it's kind of heavy toward the bad guys. Romans 1. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. And since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them up to a debased mind to do what ought not to be done. That sounds a little like America. When people say, do you think God is going to judge America? I think he already has. Maybe there's enough young people to turn things around. Okay? Landon, maybe there's enough good kids like you, Chick-fil-A, to turn this thing around. I see Landon there all the time because my granddaughter wants to eat there for 3 meals a day whenever I'm with her. And Landon hadn't been able to give us a discount, but that's something you can talk to your bosses about, who happens to be your sister. So, this is a heavy language from Paul. They were filled with all manner of unrighteousness. Look at this. Evil, covetousness, malice. They're full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, maliciousness, slanderers, haters of God. Well, this is a rough church, isn't it? Well, it's probably not the church. He's probably talking about society at large. Inventors of evil, disobedient to parents. Ooh, that's one we need to stomp on with the teens, isn't it? Foolish, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Though they know God's righteous decree that those who practice such things deserve to die, they not only do them, but give approval to those who practice them. I left one out. That's in there with the inventors of evil and haters of God. It's right up there. Now, as we continue talking about gossip, and I hope to continue this next week as I look at our time, I want to tell a couple of stories, then we'll see where we're at. Now, Landon is our youngest one in here. We got a few younger type people that are in here, but everybody that's old like me, we know what happened here, right? Do you remember? Does any of you've never heard of this story, have you? They didn't cover it in your history class. That's what kills me. I guess your history teachers are like mine. We never got past World War II. And the problem with teaching American history, it never stops. It just keeps going. And so you can't ever finish the curriculum. But for those of you who are too young, Landon, take notes. The Iranian hostage crisis. In 1979, at the U.S. Embassy in Iran, we had pretty good relations with Iran, and then everything went south. And they're ticked at the U.S. And so a huge amount of young people, college age, 20s, they stormed the embassy. And this is one of the pictures. And they take 52 Americans hostage. And they held them for 444 days. We saw this on the news, front line story every single day for 444 days. It was the lead story. I was in college, and I thought we'll never get them back. I mean, you've got the inmates running the prison, a bunch of college kids that hate us. We're not going to get them back. There's no way. And it was horrible. And for those of you that don't know this story, they came home. We got them all back after well over a year. So fortunately, we got them back. Well, about halfway through the crisis, oh, by the way, this, if y'all remember, those of you that are old, they let them go when President Reagan was being inaugurated. Right then. We don't know if they were doing it to spoil his inauguration or they were afraid of him because Mr. Carter just didn't seem tough enough to him. We don't know. We don't know. But about halfway through it, I was talking to a girl at the dorm. I was a day student. I was at home, and I was talking to a girl, and the college girls, they were calling me all the time, and that hurt my GPA. And Michael, you understand this before you met the communist girl. You just get badgered by these women constantly. And so, it hurt my grades a lot. So I'm talking to this girl, and at 9:30, there's a quick news blip. Now, just imagine me in college with the sidebar. Okay, here we go. Oh, we just went back in time right there, didn't we? Okay. Chris Clark comes on about 9:30. And, they come on with a quick news blip telling you what's coming on at 10. So I'm listening to this girl out of one ear, and then I see Chris Clark come on the news. And now remember, young people that are in here, all 52 hostages were released. All of them, unharmed. I'm sure psychologically they were harmed, but they all made it back. I thought I heard Chris Clark say, the hostages are dead, details at 10. I thought that's what he said. I thought he said they all had been assassinated. And so I'm talking to the girl. I hear him say that, and I say to her, they've killed the hostages. She said, what? They're all dead. They killed every one of them. And I hear her hollering out to the dorm, the other girls. And you just hear this real excited, I don't mean in a good way, this excited chattering. And everybody's upset. And then, we ended the conversation shortly, and I was sitting there waiting for 10 o'clock. Oh, no. And then, well, we're in the day 372, and hostages. I thought they're okay. And I've often thought, did those girls think I was just an idiot? Or having fun with a stupid joke that's horrible? But then I thought, what if that had spread all over the campus? Then they contact the news. The news contacts Washington, Pentagon. We launch an attack and I start World War III. And they trace it back to me. Sorry. My bad. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. But that's how gossip works. It moves like that. A gossip betrays a confidence, but a trustworthy person keeps a secret. The daughter of Teddy Roosevelt said, if you haven't got anything nice to say about someone, come sit next to me. She'd like to hear the juicy gossip. He then turns, and we'll kind of introduce this part of the text, and then we'll take a break for a week. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire. And we've all heard of terrible situations where a little spark caused everything. Now, I'm going to tell you here before we stop. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Chicago fire. There was actually one of those a football team in one of those startup leagues called the Chicago Fire. I don't know why we sometimes name team mascots after tragedies, like the Miami Hurricanes. I've never, there was a team that was named the Tornadoes. I don't know why we do that. The Cyclones. Kind of bizarre. But in 1871, the fire started. And what have you heard started it? What did you hear growing up, you old people? What did you hear growing up? The O'Leary cow, Miss O'Leary's cow kicked it over. It never happened. The guy that made up the story later recanted and said he just picked her because she was an Irish immigrant, and who cares about Irish immigrants? There was a lot of racism toward Irish immigrants at that time in the United States, and he thought he'd make a sensational story. They're not sure what happened. Some people think it could have been some kids playing in a barn. It could have been a homeless person in the barn. It could have been just a guy that accidentally knocked over a lantern, but they're pretty sure it did not happen in Miss O'Leary's barn. And the devastation, these are some of the photos. And you think about all the incredible old buildings that might still be around if the fire hadn't occurred, that we could enjoy some houses that go back to the 1700s. So now basically everything in Chicago just about that's downtown is no older than 1871. And these are just so tragic to look at. Of course, it reminds us of California. Over 17,000 structures went up. 73 miles of roads were destroyed. Now, at that time, one thing that really kept it blazing was the sidewalks were made out of wood. And this changed a lot of policies in a lot of cities. And they started going to solid forms for the sidewalks. 100,000 homeless and 300 dead. What would that cost today if that happened? So we're going to next week talk about some practical illustrations, and also for those of you that have gossiped a lot, maybe you have some illustrations for me. So come up and let me know if you've got some good stories that you've heard, and maybe they're not about you, but that I could share. So many of my stories did not happen to me. They're from other accounts from other people, so I would covet you sharing anything with me. I believe the bell sounded, and so you're ready to get out of here. So you are dismissed. And next